All right. Have you ever had a patient who called your office and they ask, "Hey, do you take my insurance?" And then, really quicker than your team can tell them, this patient vanishes the moment they find out that you're actually a cash practice or that you don't take their insurance. And so, in this training, I'm going to walk you through three critical points on the phone call where your front desk is actually unknowingly losing patients. And this is exactly what to say to them instead so that you can turn these questions about insurance and cost and all that stuff into actual conversions. And so here's what I want to cover. I want to cover number one, what to say right when the call starts so that we don't get a ton of these cost and insurance objections. Number two, how do we actually keep control of these phone calls so that these insurance questions don't come up in the middle? And then lastly, and most importantly, how do I confidently close this person I'm talking to without sounding pushy or salesy and all that type of stuff? And so this is the exact strategy we've used with lots of other cash and hybrid practices all over the country. And we had a practice in Arizona that we implemented this exact same strategy with, who went from a 50% call conversion, so basically a coin flip, to 82% conversion on the phone within just a few weeks. And so I want to cover that info today. Now, I secret shop practices all the time, and this is the most common time that folks are losing patients, and that's at the beginning of the phone call. And I can't tell you how many offices that I actually call into. I start talking and communicating with their front desk, or somebody from my team does, and the first thing that these people say, "Nah, no, we're out of network, right?" And give me, at that point, it's just like, hey, we've kind of lost each other, and there's this grand disconnect in what I'm looking for as the potential patient and what these people are giving me on the phone. And we want to make sure that we find ways around that information. And so, what do we say at the start of the call? We need to do a simple acknowledgement of their question, and we need to be able to redirect it. Right. And I've got all this information listed in our school community as well. My word for word response to this is, hey, totally cool. We can 100% chat about your insurance and all that good stuff. But first, I just want to make sure we're a good fit and we can actually help you. Once I know that, then we can talk about how we might get insurance involved. It's simple. It needs to be, and this is the one point of my call and the closing that I'm okay with having scripted, but I need to have a simple phrase to be able to overcome this. Now, the problem is most front desk have zero ability to actually overcome this question. And they just say, no, we're out of network. And that's either because A, they haven't been instructed on how to say these things. Or number two, what potentially happens is maybe they've been given some stuff and they just haven't been trained effectively on the stuff that they've been given. Or, inevitably there's turnover and those kind of things that sometimes happen at the front desk. And we have to patch this bottleneck, because if we don't patch this bottleneck, what are the consequences? And I see this all the time. Practice owners, they start to decrease their price, or they start to try to bundle a lot of stuff, or maybe I'm going to add a new service, right? Hey, I'll get this new laser, or I'll get this new, cool tool or gadget, or I'll get this new advanced certification for the clinic. And none of that stuff matters if we don't ever get past the insurance question at the start of the phone call. And most practice owners are pretty shocked when I actually record these calls and send it back over to them. And they're like, oh shoot, I didn't realize this was as big of a problem as it is. And so we need to have that ability to acknowledge and redirect. And some of you guys will push back a little bit on that. You'll be like, oh, like that, the patient's going to start to push back. And after doing this in my own practice and hundreds of others at this point, 99.9% out of 100, most people are totally cool with it and they're going to move right on. Because here's the thing with the insurance question, they just don't know what else to ask. That's what they're conditioned to ask, because that's how the healthcare environment has been. But really, really what they want to know is this the right place? Can you help me? And can you get me the outcome that I'm looking for? Right? Most of it comes back to that stuff, and it manifests itself as the insurance question. And so, what we want to do is we got to redirect that. And now we got to start to provide value outside of the beginning portion of the phone call. And then after I redirect them, I'm going to let them know how this phone call is going to go, right? Because there's two conflicting pieces. We've got you on the phone who should be wanting to try to get as much information about this prospect as possible. Can I help them? And if so, let's get them scheduled. And this person wants to know, well, what the heck do you guys do? And so I want to be the leader of the phone call. Most front desks especially at the start of this phone call, they act as they act as the post to handle all of these questions, right? And I want to handle these questions. However, I need to be in control of the phone call and I'll answer questions potentially at the end. And so I want to ask skilled questions. And the way that we start to ask skilled questions is we redirect the insurance question at the beginning. We set the tone of the call as I'm going to be the leader. I'm going to be the one asking you questions. This is the front desk. And then we're going to flow through a conversation and I'm going to try to discover exactly what's going on. And I've got my entire script and framework posted in our school community. If you're not in there, there's a link down below that you can join. But my entire framework is in there where I just want to start asking questions and having a dynamic conversation. What's going on? What is this person ultimately looking for? And is it something I can help them with? What are all the things that they've done or tried? What are their goals? Some of you guys, we work with some dental practices as well. Obviously, pain isn't going to be the dominating factor for those people, but they clearly have some goal in what they're looking for as it relates to, what are you looking for in a dentist, right? That's a goal at the end of the day. And so we need to figure out in nitty gritty detail all the things they've done or tried. How does this affect their life right now? And then ultimately, where are they trying to go long term? And if we get all of that information in the middle portion of the phone call, and I'm the leader of the phone call, I don't get these cost and insurance objections. But what happens is they start the phone call, they don't set the tone, they don't acknowledge and redirect the insurance question very well. And now I get to the middle of my phone call and this person on the other line is just starting to pepper you with questions, right? Well, how much does it cost? What typically goes on during the session? And now in the middle of the phone call, before I'm ready to tell them the price and that I'm out of network, now at that point, they're asking it again, right? And I still don't even know if I can help them, right? And that's why it's so critical to be asking skilled questions. And so if it does pop up in the middle of the conversation, these tend to be people who are very analytical, think maybe lawyers or maybe engineers, right? Folks who are very analytical, and we want to be able to redirect in the middle of the conversation. Now, the best way to do it is just be the leader. You're starting to be in control here, asking the questions. And then if we can get over that portion, oftentimes this doesn't even come up. It's usually at the beginning of the call and the end of the call. But if your front desk isn't doing a good job of it, now they're starting to pepper you again. So asking them questions, being the leader of the phone call. If you need to redirect it again, just let them know. Hey, totally cool. I am almost ready to make sure, or I'm almost ready to talk to you about insurance and costs and all that stuff. And I will tell you every single detail about it. I still just have one or two more questions. Is that okay? Most of the time, it's totally cool. But if you get somebody who's real antsy, you're probably going to lose them at that point, anyways. But you need to be in control. And if I'm in control, it doesn't come up in the middle of the conversation. And then the final and third place that this comes up is at the very end of the phone call. Now, I will venture to say that 95% of the practices that I've like secret shop and talk to, they can't even get to the end of the call. Like the end of the call is, well, let me know if you want to book, right? Or let me know if you have any questions, or and this is where the objections start to come up. Let me think about it, or let me talk to my spouse, or let me call my insurance company, and all these like common things start to pop up and roll. And we want to make sure that we have done such a good job connecting on the discovery that it seems superfluous, and I don't care who's going to pay for this. I just need to get your help. That's the goal with handling these cost and insurance objections. Now, at the end of the phone call, we absolutely have to be transparent. And notice I'm talking about being transparent at the end of the phone call. I want to make sure that I can help them and redirect it at the beginning. And so now that I've reached the end of the phone call, I've done a rock solid discovery with them and I've gotten to know the person and I've talked to them exactly about what it looks like to work with us. That's the key of the end of the call. I want to walk them through A to Z. What's it like at the first session? What's it like in follow-up sessions? And then why are we different at this point, right? I've got them interested. I've got them intrigued. I handle every bit of this stuff at the end of the phone call. So, if you look at our script, it's literally, hey, here's what our initial evaluation is, and here's why we're different. Here is the follow-up sessions, and here's why we're different. take a physical therapy example for example here. We tend, most PT practices, you get seen 2 or 3 times a week. You get about 10 minutes with the PT, and then you're kind of passed off in the corner to do exercises, which is kind of silly, right? Or most PTs are running behind, and so you're going to sit in a waiting room for 10 or 15 minutes, which is a pain. And it's just big, like it's a terrible experience, right? And so we highlight why we're different and why we perceive our service to be significantly better than the competition, right? And so we talk about all of that, and then at the end of that phone call, now is my opportunity to be very transparent, and I want to beat them to the punch. They ask me about insurance at the beginning of the call, and now I want to tell them exactly what that looks like. Hey, we're typically out of network with insurance. And I point out, tell them, and I use that exact language. And I tell them our exact price as well. Hey, we are $225 per session. We're technically out of network with insurance. And I want to make sure that I'm being transparent for a couple of different reasons. One, I acknowledged and told them at the beginning of the phone call that I was going to disclose that information. And you're going to break someone's trust if you're not displaying that information at the end of the phone call, right? And now they're going to be perceived to trust you less and less. The other reason for that is I don't want to be there to be mistrust once they walk into the clinic. And I told them it was 225, and then they come in, what's the first question they're going to ask? Well, do you take insurance? And I need to make sure that that objection is handled on the phone, and I'm being ethical about it, because I'd feel pretty bad about, walking into any service or any clinic, whatever it might be, and it not seeming like what was portrayed to me on the phone. You're going to get a lot of bad Google reviews at that point, right? And so we want to make sure that we disclose that information. And then at the very end of that phone call, we need to have a framework to be able to mitigate those cost and insurance objections and to potentially push someone to ultimately want to book with you. Now, again, I said this at the beginning of this call, is I want someone to be very bought in, and we've carried such a solid connection based conversation throughout the portion of this discovery call that they just want to book with you because they know, like, and trust you now. But there are some people who are going to be on the fence still, and we need to have some frameworks to be able to push them over kind of the fence. And that needs to be, whether it's some scripting that's specific to your practice or some objection handling framework to try to dig into the deeper root cause of why they are objecting. Oftentimes, it's not always because of insurance, or it's not always because of money, or we'll take the spouse objection for example. A lot of times that's just a smokescreen for, I don't trust you just yet. And so we need to figure out what that mistrust is. And oftentimes people will blame their spouse. And sometimes it's a permission thing, right? Like, I tend not to spend several $100s without chatting with my spouse. That's just an agreement that me and my wife personally have, right? And so sometimes it's just a permission based thing. And sometimes it truly is just a smokescreen objection. And so you need to be able to have some frameworks to kind of triage some of that stuff, and definitely have that stuff scripted out so that maybe the stuff that you handle in the office, you give some of that same framework over to your front desk staff so that they can actually have some of those conversations as well. Because we also don't want a bunch of, I don't know where your practice is, but we also want to have some, I don't want to bring every tire kicker in the door either, right? And it's like I can do a nice connection with people, and I'm bringing people in, and it's like, hey, this person's recently unemployed, has no money, and has no ability to actually pay for future service. Maybe we actually don't want that person in the clinic. And so you need to have some frameworks and some guardrails around either financially disqualifying people, but also trying to push some of those people that truly do have the finances kind of over the edge. So, all right, let's recap a little bit here. We've got the first main time that someone is going to lose, your front desk is going to lose a patient to objections, the beginning portion of the phone call. It's the most common. If you can get past that initial hump, you're guaranteed to book more patients. Number two is the middle of the phone call. That's typically because we didn't establish ourselves as the leader asking questions. Instead, we are the person being asked a lot of questions. And then lastly, at the end of the phone call, and this typically comes up because either A, we didn't do a good enough discovery, B, we didn't actually tell them what it was like to work with us, and so now they just have a bunch of questions. And then lastly, we just don't have a good enough framework to be able to handle these cost and insurance objections when they do come up. And so these are the big main points And if you can solve these three things, I guarantee you'll drive your conversions up on the phone, and ultimately more people are coming into the clinic. And then now you've got more people actually showing up and scheduling initial evaluations. And so now that you know the common places people are losing it, I've got some additional trainings on our YouTube or inside of our school community where you can find out how do I actually talk to these people in a little bit more depth on the phone and do a solid discovery. We'll see you next time.